Welcome to the Wealth Matters podcast, where investors come together to better understand how to build passive cash flow and create generational wealth without all the confusing mumbo-jumbo. Here's your host and co-author of Amazon #1 bestseller, Alpesh Pamar.
Welcome to Wealth Matters podcast. I am going to talk about franchising today. We had another guest about 6 months ago, Kim Daly, and she mentioned about why franchising and how franchising works during this market cycle. We have another very, very experienced guest today. His name is Scotty Milas, and he has been an entrepreneur dating back to his teen years, where he started small businesses mowing lawns, raking leaves, and shoveling snow. In his early 20s, he began a career with a major news organization as a cameraman for the White House Press Corp. I think we may have a lot more to talk about here.
I don't kiss and tell, so.
But Scotty has a lot of experience, and he is also one of the well-recognized franchise consultants. So we will talk about some of the common pitfalls about franchising. So welcome, Scotty.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's great to be with you.
Absolutely.
Alpesh, I was just saying that it's hard to believe that we're approaching the holidays and the end of the year, and
Yep.
A big wow, I guess.
Yeah. We are almost done with 2022. It's like the COVID years. We don't realize we sit at home and the years pass by.
Yep. I think more importantly is when you really think about it, it's 16, 17 years ago that we went through the recession back then.
Yes.
I mean, it's just
it's been a while.
It's amazing how time flies. It really is.
And it's about time.
It is. Exactly.
So tell us something interesting or funny about yourself, even though I think I spilled all the beans about entrepreneurship and the cameraman.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was kind of looking over the agenda and some of the questions we wanted to talk about and everything, I was kind of chuckling to myself, something funny about myself. I am a very early riser. I love the mornings. And my wife is not as an early riser as I am. She's typically up when it's already, gets up when it's dawn, lights breaking. I'm up when it's dark. So I have a tendency to get myself ready, dressed in the morning in the dark. And that's not to put on the lights, so not to disturb her.
Right.
And it really is funny how many times, and I have a lower level in my home that I built out for an office and have a little studio set up and everything. And it's just really funny how sometimes I'll go upstairs and I'll hear her up, and I'd like to have coffee with her in the morning, or, a little breakfast before she leaves. And she'll look at me and say, hey, your shirt's on backwards, or you got your sweater inside out. Or, it's just really funny how it's just a common mistake that I make, that, I'm just, or I have my sweatshirt on backwards, the hood is out front, and I won't even notice it until she points it out. So that's a little something about me. Interesting about me. Wow. I guess that's a little, that's for a lot of other people to decide. But I think I have a really good, diverse background. In all senses, working for organizations, companies, being an executive in companies, but also owning small businesses, helping help franchise a company in the fast casual, fast food space, really from its inception and putting it on the map. So I have a lot of experience, I guess, I bring to the table. I think I'm a founder of that saying, I like to take the cotton out of my ears and put it back in my mouth. So I like to consider myself a good listener, as they say. So
that's great. That's a great. And by the way, I love rising early, but I don't think I rise as early as you do. but I have the exact same thing. My wife does not like to wake up early, but we have to anyhow, because we have to get kids ready, and she'll prepare the lunch and all. But when I was training for my half Ironman, and even before COVID, I used to wake up at 5 and hit the gym at 5:30 a.m. And that was the earliest I used to wake up. But I remember when I would come home, they are just, waking up from the sleep. So I wanted to get my workout done.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably a little older than you. We're at the grandchildren stage.
Right,
So,
right.
I probably get up a lot earlier than you, but I probably go to bed a lot earlier.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Oh.
uh,
So let's talk about, because as you mentioned, you have pretty diverse background, right? But how did you get started with franchising business?
I'll kind of give you the short version here. I had an extensive background in the food industry, restaurants. I grew up as a kid working for an Italian family on Long Island in the pizza industry. I started working with them when I was like 8, 9 years old, and I just fell in love with the pizza business. But I always somehow or another worked in the food industry. And a friend of mine's uh, uh, brother was opening a pizzeria in one of the towns that I lived nearby. And he said I should probably go talk to him, see if I can lend a help, lend some advice and guidance. So I ended up helping out his son open a pizzeria, being part of his staff for a while. And his brother, the son's father's brother, was opening or starting a franchise in the fast casual better burger category. So he used to come into the store. We go back and forth. I was talking to him for about 18 months, got to know him. And finally he said, hey, why don't you come over and help us? And because of my operational experience, I started on the operations side, opening up stores for the franchisees, supporting them, and then got kind of sidetracked into the development side, working with his partner, who I'm still very, very good friends with today, and just really started heading up U.S. development. And that's really how I got into franchising and started sitting on panels at conferences and speaking on franchising. So it's, I've become a big proponent of it. And it's funny because, Alpesh, my father wanted me to go to the McDonald's School of Management.
Nice.
And this is before I got into the news media. And I kind of laughed at him. I said, you want a pizza guy from New York to go to the McDonald's School of Management? Right. I said, no way. So it's a circle, a complete circle for me. Right. So I took all that experience and bottled it up, and have now had a consulting business for a number of years now, where I help people research and explore business ownership, primarily in the franchising space, but dabble in some other areas, and really help people just kind of build that roadmap, that model, so that they can eventually make a validated decision on what's best for them and their family versus an emotional decision. So that's how I got here.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Some bumps on the road along the way, but I got it.
Of course. So let's talk about the current market, right? Do you think franchise business is a still good idea in this current environment?
I'm going to try to answer that without being biased, because I'm a very big proponent of franchising. Right. Franchising, if you go back and start looking at the history of franchising, look at some data, the success of being a franchisee versus an independent. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of independent business owners that have been very, very successful. Right. But if you look at the strength of the franchising industry, it has succeeded and done well in both down time in the economic sector and done well when things are doing really well, when the economy is doing well. So there are different aspects of the businesses, with the categories within franchising that do well in certain times versus others, kind of that need versus a want. But right. I think, if you're really considering business ownership, franchising should definitely be on your list of things to consider and research.
Yeah, that makes sense. What should someone look for while choosing a franchise?
I always joke that making the decision, the validated decision, is almost like deciding whether you want to ask your girlfriend to marry you. You don't have to love absolutely everything about her or like everything about her. I mean, you got to love her, but you have to be able to know that you're going to get along. So I coach my clients on, look, step away from the actual business model for, as you go in the early stages of conversations, but get to know the people within the organization. Are you going to be comfortable with these people supporting you, helping you grow, helping you become successful? And are you comfortable with them within the organization that are continually going to develop the systems for you to be comfortable? Once you've decided on that, then go to the actual business model and really dive into whether you think that you can delegate those systems to be successful.
Now, yeah, I think that totally makes sense, because we will need some businesses, right? You will
Right.
always, when you are choosing a franchise, even during COVID, some of the businesses were mandatory, right? They had to be kept open, right? So that's
Essential businesses,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yep.
So let's talk about the pitfalls. What are some of the common pitfalls to avoid when selecting a franchise?
I would say the when you say pitfalls in choosing the wrong brand or making a mistake, if that's what you're referring to, I think what happens is that people don't give themselves enough time to learn, or what I call get to know your know, KNOW. Stay on focus on what's your why. Know your why. Why are you doing this? Simply because you don't like your boss is not a reason to
Nope.
open a business or be an entrepreneur and or visionary. But the common pitfalls are people, one, don't get themselves properly funded. They think the funding aspect of opening a business is secondary. It really should be primary, and really should be something you first look at to see where you would fit and how that's going to affect your work-life balance or your life balance if you did open a business or invest in something. People don't take their time to kind of get into the details, validate, talking to franchisees within the system, people that may be similar to their background. For example, if you have somebody that was displaced from corporate America, an executive, talk to those corporate executives that have been displaced within the franchise to see how their experience are, because your job experience or work experience are almost the same as theirs. So see if it's translated to success. They allow themselves to be sold, and the other big one is that they don't have their spouse or significant other on board. I always, like to tell my clients that, if your spouse came up to you and told you that they were going to write a check for $200,000 to, buy a sports car or redecorate the house, how would you feel?
Right.
Well, talk to your spouse, agree on what you want to do, how you're going to work this. And if you having your spouse involved in the business, each of you should write out what you think the other's responsibilities are, because there's going to be a time when you're going to want to do something and they're going to want to do something, but the business needs to be tended to. So how are you going to handle that? So I think those are some of the pitfalls. I mean, but I think the financing is pretty self-explanatory. Get yourself. I mean, I encourage my clients. I have a financial consultant that I pay for my clients to talk to kind of go through the process of going through what they would qualify for, what they're looking at as far as payments, and so forth. So I think that's important.
So no, I was listening and I was thinking about it as well, and I think the top two, and again, I'm glad that you will agree as well. One is, of course, financing, because not only writing the check up front, but you got to have enough reserves, right?
Yes.
Things could break, things could change, especially as we saw during COVID time. And just taking those examples, the companies or the, let's say, restaurants or the hotels which closed down within first 3 months of COVID, they did not get any government benefits, right? The PPP, the ERTC, the employee retention credit, etc., because they had to be in the business when the government announced all that. So the company at the restaurants, and I have friends who had a hotel, and they kept it open for first 6 months, and they made a lot more money than when they were running businesses. They're like, we got $4 million. Even when the hotel, no one is coming to the hotel, we just had to keep the employees. So just to think about it, they didn't have any expenses other than the employee expenses because no one was
Right,
coming to visit them, right? They
right,
didn't have any turnaround, they didn't have any laundry bills, whatnot, right? But they got paid.
right, right. Well, you bring up an interesting point. You know, as an independent business owner during the pandemic, those 2 years, you know, it was a struggle not to have the business, but it
Mm.
was also a struggle to be able to go out and find the help and the assistance.
Yes,
In a
very true.
franchise system, the franchisor was helping the franchisees with all those twists and turns, the zig and the
Right.
zag, where to get the help, what you should be doing, what kind of help can we give you as the franchisor, whether it's let's turn off royalties for until this settles down, or let's hold off on the ad fund contributions. So again, the beauty of that is that the franchisees had a partner to go to, a sounding board for guidance and help, whereas an independent business owner really had to pick up the phone and call the bank and say, or an accountant, and maybe they didn't know what direction to go in. So again, people have been successful in independent. I would tell client or people that are looking at exploring business ownership, look at all options.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
but that to me, that's an example of how franchising helps people with, to be successful in business.
Oh, that's great. So, and of course, you have helped a lot of business owners so far, find the right franchising as well as, work with them, right, or guide them. Can you share your biggest success story in the franchise world, like a client you helped and they did pretty well, and maybe they ended up selling the business?
You know, uh, I have quite a bit of success. I've stayed in contact with a lot of my clients over the years. Some have expanded, gotten into multiple units, multiple territories. Some have invested in additional brands and now become a multi-brand operator. But I've always gotten tickled pink. That's the way I call it. When I've seen people who have been displaced by corporate America, who really think that life is kind of down in the doldrums, and they think that investing in a business is a way to buy a job, and it's not. But those people changing their mentality or the way they're thinking and viewing about business ownership, and then speaking to them how successful are. I have a couple out in Texas that I worked with, was in that situation, not one, but both of them got displaced. They didn't know what direction to go in. I helped them and steered them and put them in contact with people who helped on the financing side, and now they're very successful. They're comfortable. You know, uh, they they're doing well. But I think the biggest story is a gentleman that I worked with, again, out of Texas. He was a senior global vice president of HR for a major corporation. I won't name the corporation.
Right.
And he had been at this for about 25 years, 27 years, and he was tired. And he wanted to go into the restaurant business. Now, I kept trying to talk him out of it because the restaurant business is not hard work, it's long work.
No,
But he
it's
really
right.
wanted to get into the restaurant business. He just felt that that's where he wanted to go. Well, short and long story is he got his agreements, and he was supposed to sign them. And the franchisor called me up during the week and said, look, I haven't gotten the franchise agreements back from so-and-so. I said, wow. So I left him a couple of messages. He called me back at the end of the week and said, Scott, look, he says, you got a minute, there's something I want to talk to you about. And I said, what's the offer? He says, what do you mean? I said, what's the offer? He says, how do you know? I said, I've been at this for a long time. What's the offer? He says, Scott, I got an offer from another company for double what I'm making now. So let's just put this range in the $600,000-$700,000 range, plus perks and bonuses. So I joked and I said, hey, why are we having this conversation? It's a no-brainer.
Right.
He says, well, I said, no. I said, look, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the weekend and think about this. And the only thing I want you to think about is I want you to go back for the first time we started to talk and started to build your roadmap and business model, and understand how you got to where you are now, your why. If you're willing to change your why, then take the job. If you don't want to change your why, if you want to change your why, how we got started, then move forward with the business opportunity. Well, he called me up on that Monday and said, I signed the agreements, I paid the fees. You're absolutely right. I don't want to go back to that work-life balance. So to me, those are the kind of things that I like to hear. And he's getting ready to open up his first of 3 restaurants early December.
That's awesome. Any failure of a franchise business for your clients, and what did you learn from it?
It's funny you say that. I have something that happened about 3-4 years ago. A gentleman who wanted to get into a consulting type business, and I kept telling him that the consulting type business really isn't for you based on all the parameters that we looked at. I said, you're really looking for something that you can build up, then eventually sell it or maybe pass it on. I said, that's really hard to do in the consulting business because as a consultant, people are buying you or working with you because of you. They're not going to, nobody's going to buy a client list because, it's just, there's no value in the business unless you build a whole team and scale it out. But they insisted, and 6 months into it, they called me up and said, hey, can you help me sell my business? Whatever. I mean, he ended up having the franchisor buy back the business because they had somebody else that wanted that territory. So it worked out. So those kind of things happen. The other one was a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a gentleman, and really him and his wife were in the early stages of their marriage. And they were living in an apartment. They wanted to buy a house. So they had saved up some pretty good liquid, and they wanted to start a family. And I said to the guy, I said to him, I said, you've got to go out and buy a home to start your family.
Yeah.
No, I want to start a business. I want to bring more wealth in. I said, look, you're going to have to find somebody else to work with. I said, because my guidance is go out and buy your house first. Yeah. Establish your home where your base of family is, and let's come back in 6 months, a year and a half, and then open your business. I said, the 18 months that it takes you to do all this it'll be 18 months before you know it. It will be a heartbeat. Yeah, so he was very aggravated, a little disappointed. I said, nope. I said, you got to go you got to go buy a house. I said, because first of all, that's what your wife wants you to do.
Right. No, happy wife, happy life. Right?
Exactly.
That's so important.
So those are two of the two kind of stories I like to share with people.
No, that's an advice from a wise head, right? With a lot of experience, you got to have a happy wife, and you got to have your priorities in order. Yeah, you have to take care of the family first, and everything will fall into place.
Well, I also said, and I think you know this because you've talked to your listeners about this, that obviously you want to own a home because you want a home to live in, but it also helps you build that equity and helps you build the liquidity, maybe to do other things. So again, there's nothing like having a roof over your head that's yours.
No, it's the most important thing, right? Everyone needs a roof.
Yep. Yeah.
No, this is great. Thank you so much for sharing a lot of the golden nuggets. We'll switch gears now. Are you ready for 5 round?
Let's go ahead. Let's do it.
Would you be changing any business or investment strategy after this pandemic is over, or pretty much because of inflation or recession?
Obviously, the interest rates have a bearing on what people could qualify for if they're looking for funding through the SBA or a term loan. It does reflect HELOC. If somebody's going to use a line of credit from their home to start a business. So I think those are the questions that any good consultant should be asking their clients or the financial consultant that they're working with to really get a grasp. I mean, you got to be able to pay your bills and eat. And I think this, Alpesh, is that you don't want to open a business and be swimming upstream. Opening a business is stressful enough, it's hard work. But if you have that stress of how you're going to pay your bills, or you don't have enough money, that only adds more complication to it. So I want my clients going into a business knowing that they're comfortable and they have those 12 to 18 months, 6 to 12 months, 6 to 18 months of that leg room to be able to build their business.
That makes sense. Favorite real estate or business development or any other related book?
I will tell you that I'm not a very big reader. I'm a listener. I think it has to do with my patience level. I'm very, I think when I sit down to read a book, I'm exhausted, and I think I get through one or two chapters. But a very, very close friend of mine, Faizun Kamal, wrote a book, The Right Franchise for You, really talking about escaping the 9 to 5. So I would definitely encourage anyone who's thinking about or wants to start talking about a franchise. I send this book out to all my clients that I start consulting with. It's one of the first things that I send them. So there are some great books out there about, business. But, I think the biggest thing I can tell people in educating yourselves is remember how long it took you to get to where you are right now.
Right.
The idea that you're going to do it in half the time or a quarter of the time or in 6 months, you're shortchanging yourself. You've got to plan this out accordingly.
Yeah.
So, it's, I had a client on the phone last week, and they were earning $500,000 a year. And they said they want a business that's going to earn them $500,000 a year, but they only wanted to invest X. And I said, look, it's not going to happen after the first year with that type of investment.
Put in.
Yeah, I said, you have to be realistic. So it's, it's a lot of hard work. It's patience, but you got to remember, it takes time to get there.
I agree. Any tool or website you recommend or you cannot live without?
I would encourage everybody to visit the International Franchise Association website, IFA. There are a lot of educational type websites out there on business development, business ownership. I would encourage people to speak to a couple of different consultants like myself and find somebody you're comfortable with and you feel you can trust. Like I said, it's like, dating someone. You want to feel comfortable with them. You want to get to that point where,
Right.
you can pretty much tell them anything or, and sometimes I get people say, hey, I have another consultant that I'm working with. I want to try that first. And that's okay. I think the key is you got to remember that this whole process is about you. It isn't about me. It isn't about them. It's about you. And if you stay focused on that, the outcome will be a lot better.
Makes sense. Any advice for beginner investors?
Yeah, don't bite off more than you can chew. I mean,
That
be
is so
realistic.
important.
I mean, I use the old saying that if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So, don't get fooled. Do your homework, do your validation. Don't fall for things like, well, if you don't sign your agreements or we don't get this wrapped up by the end of the week, you're going to lose the territory. Don't fall for things like that. You have to make a decision. There are no maybes in franchising. You do have to make a decision, but make a validated decision, an emotional decision, and do your homework. Speak to the other franchisees in the system.
Thank you for that. How do you give back?
Well, it's funny. When I was thinking about this, I've spent a lot of time recently down in Florida helping with people from Hurricane Ian. Because 5 miles, 7 miles south of us was totally destroyed in the Fort Myers area. So I've volunteered my time. We just try to give back. I mean, it's again, if you think about it on a business standpoint, my consulting fees are paid by the franchisors that I represent, the brands that are in my portfolio. So if someone like you came to me for advice, you're not paying me anything. So I give a lot of what I know and expertise to people, absolutely free. So, we've helped, rescue pets. So there's, different things that we've done to give back.
Well, this is great, Scotty. I really appreciate your time. How can my listeners reach out to you?
You can reach me on my website, fill out an inquiry form, scottmilasfranchisecoach.com, SCOTTMILAS, franchisecoach.com. Email me, Scott@scottmilasfranchisecoach.com. Give me a call if you want, 860-751-9126. I do run a podcast on franchising, all things considered franchising. Visit YouTube, look me up. But if you just want to bend my ear, you may not be ready just to take a deep dive, but give me a call to bend my ear.
Thank you so much, Scotty, for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And have a great rest of the year and a prosperous 2023. And healthy one, too.
I wish the same for you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Wealth Matters podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes so others can enjoy the show too. Have a great week and happy investing!